Hello everyone, this is Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com. Today I have a hand that I played in a $1,000 buy-in side event recently. Blinds are 50, 100. I opened to 300 with pocket fives from third position. This seems perfectly fine to me. Pocket fives are great. A random guy calls on the button, and then someone who I have labeled as a happy kid calls in the big blind. This happy kid is someone who plays very well, a good loose aggressive player who is not afraid to get out of line, and he's generally cheerful about it. So it comes 7, 6, 5, and I have a set of fives, which is obviously great. The happy kid elects to lead for 500, which is half pot. So what hands do most loose aggressive players typically lead with on boards like this? I think most people lead with draws, either good or bad. You know, those can range from a hand like Ace-8 of diamonds to a hand like 4-2. So they can, completely range the spectrum. He could also be leading with decent top pairs. And he could also be leading with random junky pairs, although I think that's somewhat unlikely. So if I had to guess, I would say this kid probably has a lot of draws in his range. I think that's actually most of his range. And then a few sporadic nut hands. Notice I actually block a lot of the nut hands, though, like 7-5 and 6-5. So what should we do versus that range? Well, if he has a draw, like let's say he has 10-9, I don't really care if he stays in the pot, right? I think it's very clear to understand in this spot, I actually know which draws or which cards I don't particularly want to see on the turn. Notice any 9, 8, 4, or 3 are the bad cards, and every other card is incredibly safe. This is a little bit different than if there were, say, 2 spades on the flop, and then I have to worry about all of those straight draws plus all the spades. And that spot I probably should go ahead and raise and just try to get money in the pot and protect my hand. But here, I'm not so concerned with protection because I pretty cleanly know which cards are bad. And even on those cards, it's not like I'm going to fold. I'm still just going to call and lose a smallish pot. So I'm going to call in the spot. Also, we let the random guy come along with whatever he has sometimes. And he does actually call, so that's great. Turns a 3. One of the cards I did not want to see. And now, Happy Kid bets 2,000 into the 2,450 pot. So, I said I specifically did not want to see the 3. Here's the 3. Should we call or should we fold? I think raising's out of the question. Notice if I raise, he's probably only going to continue when I am crushed, which is not what I want at all. So, I think folding's actually out of the question in this scenario. Notice that I do have, at worst, a draw to the nuts, or the effective nuts to a full house. So folding would be way too tight. So calling's really the only play here. At worst, our hand's a good draw. At best, we have our opponent absolutely demolished. So in that scenario, you very often want to call. Random guy over here does fold. And here we go to the river. It's a king. It's a blank. And my opponent decides to go all in for my 10,000 chip stack into the 6,000 pot. He actually thought for about 4 minutes before making this all in, which is pretty abnormal. You don't see that too often. Usually when a guy thinks for 4 minutes, he ends up checking. He thought for 4 minutes and ended up betting. And big. So now the question becomes, what does my opponent's range look like? If he had a bunch of the draws on the flop, notice all of them that don't contain a 4 missed. Ace-8 missed. King-8 would probably not play this way. Queen-8 missed. Jack-8 missed. 8-7 would probably not play this way. He, of course, could just have 9-8 on the flop. Did I say 9-8 already? If he had 9-8, we just lose. He could also have a hand like 10-9 or Jack-9 or Queen-9. We beat all those. He may not even have very many 4s in his pre-flop calling range. I do think this player does defend very wide, but I don't think he has 4-2 and hands like Queen-4 and Jack-4 and 10-4, 9-4, 8-4. He probably doesn't have too many of those in his range. So this is a spot where my opponent's representing a nut hand, but it's really easy to find a lot of bluffs that he could conceivably have in his range. And I do think this player would be the type of player who's capable of bluffing with a hand like a random 8. So all of that makes me think that we have what ends up being a very easy call. One other thing worth mentioning here is that if I'm folding this hand, you always want to ask yourself, what am I actually calling with if I'm folding this? Well, I'm folding out every hand besides a straight, which is pretty hard to have given I raised from early position. I don't have very many 4s in my range. Of course, I could just have 9-8. Or a set of 7s or a set of 6s. And that's just an incredibly tight range. Especially against good players, you have to make sure you are not folding out effectively your entire range to a bet. And I think if I fold in the spot, that is exactly what I would be doing. So for that reason, I think I pretty much have to call. You're not loving it, but this is the spots good players put you in. So my opponent does go all in, and he shows up with 8-2 of diamonds. So, one of the hands that made some sense. I didn't know if he would defend with 8-2 preflop, but he did elect to turn this hand into a bluff. And seeing he had 8-2, he could certainly have probably all the 4s, or more of the 4s than I would think. Obviously, he's suited, right? So it's not like it's just 8-2 offsuit. But certainly could have all the 4s if he has all the 8s, and at least in the suited variety. So maybe this call is a little bit optimistic, but at the same time, like I said, if I'm folding this hand, I'm folding almost everything. And against good players, you simply cannot justify folding almost everything. So that's going to be it for this video. I want to thank you all for being here. If you enjoyed this video, share it with your friends. I know each and every one of you has someone who you talk poker with. And if you guys want to help me out, if you want to share my messages, share this hand with your friends. That would be very beneficial. So thanks again for watching. Make sure you check out my blog over at jonathanlittlepoker.com for more educational poker content. And I will talk to you next time.